We did
Let's move on to the final lane, which would be the bot lane. We're going to do this one together only because there weren't a ton of support changes that have gone through very recently. That doesn't mean that the support pool hasn't changed at all, but that there weren't a ton of changes themselves. So starting with AD carries, let's talk about that meta. We had the meta of Ashe, Sivir, Jhin. Those were like the only three with the occasional Lucian pick, and that was pretty much the prevailing meta for the majority of Summer Split. Of course, all of those champions have been hit in some way or another. What do we feel about the AD carry position right now?
Ezreal.
Yes.
That's the champion that comes up. He's been seeing buffs here and there. He got a passive buff, and since everyone else gets brought down, that's usually when the pool widens because there's no other champion that's really closing out or preventing other champions from being played.
Right.
Ezreal is the fourth AD that kind of rises up to the occasion. He can build two different ways. If you're snowballing really hard, you can go the Triforce build. If you want a lot of utility, which is usually the most popular competitive build, you can go Gauntlet, and he's very, very hard to catch and dive. And the funny thing is, almost every AD main I know just has an amazing Ezreal. And so I love when Ezreal's meta for Worlds because then you have people like Prey, people like Death, all these great AD players playing like a champion that has a very high skill ceiling.
Okay, so Ezreal jumping up in priority here. Any other champions? We've seen Twitch played occasionally in pretty much all of the regions, but of course, being a weaker laner, lane swaps were one of the ways that teams could hide that champion. That's not really a possibility anymore. Is he still viable?
I think he's good into Lucian. I think you can play him as, if you get like a Karma support, you can just push in on the lane and have a pretty good time with the Twitch. I think we'll probably see Twitch. We'll probably see like a Tristana that'll just push in and try to get a first turret.
Stixxay on the Tristana.
I think we might even see like two people pull out like the Varus pocket pick. I think Sneaky and NL are quite likely to actually pull that out because it's a very dominant lane and you just keep poking and poking and pushing out.
Do we feel that the actual role of ADC has changed at all? Whereas Ashe, Sivir, and Jhin were more utilized for their kind of utility, their ability to engage, or at least fight from longer ranges, in ricochet crits or just Jhin ult and that kind of thing. Do we feel like you still want utility-oriented ADCs, or are we moving away from that and looking at just damage-oriented ADCs in the Ezreal dilutions?
I don't know how much actually the champions were nerfed. The Sivir has like 0.1 AD scaling down on the W, and the ultimate gives her like less attack speed, but the ultimate still gives the movement speed, and she can still wave clear with like, I think, more ricochet.
And she still has an auto reset, right?
Yeah, exactly. So she's still viable. Ashe has gotten a nerf on her ultimate and generally also on her Q, so a little bit less. And also for the Jhin, I think it's like the one that was hit the most because the AD scaling goes down on the W. And he gets this huge flat AD that really makes the W stick. Still, the CC is up, so I think like all three of them are still viable.
Right.
But I really think that people will cater more towards like having the Tristana that is like been popping out more in EU as well.
Yeah, the thing that I might see fall out is actually the Ashe, because there's another nerf on top of that, which was the W cooldown is up.
In 618, her W cooldown got nerfed as well.
Less wave clear, less ability to push the wave early on and get that level advantage and be oppressive. And I was checking like all the pro solo queues, like nobody is playing Ashe right now. Like she might be a little boring, but I feel like nobody's playing her, and all these other champions are coming up, and I feel like it's way more fun, and we're going to see aggressive AD carries.
I think the one thing you should think about when you're looking at ADs is you should think about range. And what I mean is not only effective range on the champions, but what they can bring in terms of like from the utility from that range as well. So you think of Ashe initiation, think of Jhin ulti, Jhin W, and then you look at a lot of the other picks. Tristana, which is apparently seen a lot of play recently, Twitch, which might come up. That's all due to effective range, because when you think about the meta shifts in the other lanes, you think about low, like kind of medium range, low range champions that are very, very dominant. Right. For instance, you don't want to be playing Vayne when the other team, when Ryze is meta, because as soon as you pick Vayne, Ryze just snares you, you're dead.
Right.
And the same reasons for...
So you have to stay out of that range.
Exactly. And so when stuff like Orianna comes back, stuff like Ryze comes back, you want to be able to have very long range to be able to work with, so you can team fight very easily around these threats. That's why like potentially even Caitlyn might see a lot of play. A champion that typically only sees a lot of play around situations where you need that level of range, and you see her a lot to like counterpick stuff like LeBlanc was really, really common to work against that champion. I think she might see play because having long range to deal with champions with like Ryze, like Orianna is just very, very valuable right now.
So the AD carry meta shift is due in part because yes, the S tier champions got nerfed in Ashe, Sivir, and Jhin, but also because of the way that the rest of the map is evolving, it's going to require different things, different skill sets essentially from our champions in the AD carry position.
I suspect that just because it's so much harder to play when you're at a range deficit. That's been the case for like throughout the entire season, but doubly so now when the meta starts shrinking to where you're starting to see these like lower range threats, in my opinion.
All right, so once again, I want to try and create like a stack ranking for the champions in the ADC position. We've already mentioned, of course, that those kind of core 3 from previous have fallen a bit. Is there a clear top tier ADC champion?
I think Ezreal.
You think Ezreal is the S tier for ADCs now? Why is that?
Scar was talking about the range in which you're outputting damage, and there's so many things that are now medium range that you need to stay long range. He can poke, and he has the opportunity to use his move block to get in and actually escape sometimes as well. So he not only does he have effective range, he has a really good escape.
Okay.
And of course, he's
agreements, disagreements.
I think
pretty high damage now.
I think Ezreal overall has just like so much different ways to use. He has like a really good range. He can go a little bit of armor with the Frozen Gauntlets and the slow. And he has always been the champion that if you let him like scale a little bit, has been putting out a lot of damage. And also now he has less problems on lane because the others have been nerfed. Like especially the lane bullies, like Ashe has less cooldown, more cooldown on the W. Jhin has, less wave clear with the W. And the Sivir as well with the W. So yeah, I think it just
everyone's W got nerfed.
Everyone's W got nerfed.
So yeah. All right, so Ezreal's up to the top of it. Who follows that?
I actually really like Jhin. I don't even necessarily know if I like Ezreal at the very, very top.
Okay.
I just think he's now in the top 4 you could talk about. However,
I think he's always good.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
he's not providing like CC.
But yeah, that's a problem. Is like his utility is very low, and until you hit like 2 items, that's usually a spike. Either you go the Triforce build, tier Triforce, or you go like the tier into the Frozen Gauntlet. And until you finish off 2 items, he's typically like fairly weak before you do that. However, with champions like Jhin, I feel like he dominates the very long range very effectively, and he has very unique ways to pick champions.
Okay.
And so, and not on such a long cooldown like Ashe, which requires like 60, 80 seconds, or it's like 80 seconds plus on the arrow. It's every 10 seconds you can hit it, and because of his unique build path where you go Yomu's Rush, he's able to come mid and snipe out the immobile mid laner very consistently. You can at least blow summoners doing that. So he's got very unique. He's in a unique position in the game to where he can dominate very specific matchups.
Yeah, I actually think this is really big. Like you're talking about how he affects everything else. Like not only does he pick low mobility mid laners, because most of them are low mobility now in this meta, top laners not building as much armor. You're seeing a lot of guys like the Rumble, the Kennen, things like that, and the Jace that we're talking about, the Rise. So the armor penetration build actually gets better when it's flat armor
more
pen.
Effective. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Jhin still definitely viable. Ezreal, though, moving his way up into kind of that, top tier of ADC champions. Anything else there that's of note? I mean, we think that Twitch is still playable. Yep. Caitlyn and Tristana will find their way back into the meta.
Lucian's still there.
Lucian is still there. Do we think that Ashe is pretty much gone?
That's my theory, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you would pick Ashe or Jhin, like depending on what, because both champions just provide you with this kind of, we want to fight now, so we press W and ultimate. So like this is kind of the idea from Jhin and Ashe. And if you need CC in your comp, just go for that. If you need DPS, then you can go maybe for other champions like Sivir is really good with the Ricochet. So yeah, I'm not too sure how much this is needed, and we'll also like tie into what other engaged tools are there right now.
Right.
Like, GP has been out. There's like Bard ultimate.
Yeah.
What else is there?
It's really weird because like I want to be able to push out certain ADs. Like I don't know how good Sivir is. I think she's very good in specific comps. But also when you think about the champions that everyone says is going to be really good, like Sheepy brought up, like Kennen, that would be really good. Kennen Sivir's always been ultra dominant, and then when you think about synergy with Rumble and Rise, like Sivir Rise, you can just run over the other team really easily. And so like I want to say though, it'll be very dependent on how everything else plays out. I just think the top 4, the top 3 stays the same, and then we add in Ezreal, and then that's my current list on what to expect.
Interesting. Yeah. All right, and now let's talk about the other half of the bot lane, because as the AD carry meta kind of develops, so will the support meta. And as we mentioned earlier, not a ton of actual patch changes were targeted at the supports, but as the rest of the map changes, so too will the meta for supports. What do we expect to see here? Because MSI, it was the rise of the range supports. But more recently, we've kind of seen the resurgence of the melee tank supports.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like watching the LCK right after MSI, like everybody's like, oh, range supports, and then like within like 3 weeks, everybody's back on melee supports. Like Alistar's back in. Oh,
Right.
everybody's playing Taric now, right? Into like these great matchups. And then Tom Kench came back at the end. So I feel like there's karma for range supports right now.
Okay.
And then everything else is pretty much melee, especially since the rest of the map isn't as tanky. Like if you're running a Graves, Nidalee jungle, Kennen, Rumble top, it's like
Right.
Braum, Tom Kench, these guys jump up really high in priority.
Yeah, I think apart from Karma, there's also Bard. Provides
that's right.
really
That's
good utility and really good laning. And the problem is right now, if you're going for melee champions as support, because you need the tankiness, you know, everything gets a little bit more squishy, and you need the CC. Like Braum is really, really good right now. Alistar might be good, but only in certain matchups, and that's really where it comes. Like everything seems to be like counter matchup favorable right now, and only mid lane and jungle seem to be like, you know, kind of fine if you get the right picks. But like top lane ADC support, we're always like very counter pick dependent. So I think really that it will be hard to see when you prioritize what pick at what time, and you should really try to get like those safe picks. Karma, Braum, Bard, I think are like the most relevant, and then maybe a Taric as a counter pick.
Okay, thoughts here?
I always thought that the support role really opened up this season. I think that this is probably the healthiest the support's ever been. I talk to any support pro player, and they're just like, oh, I can play like one of 12 champions at any given moment.
Well, that's cool.
It's really just depending on like, if I get the counter pick, like will the team let me have the counter pick? I think now, especially like Shibi said, that with top lane demanding more counter pick status, we might see earlier supports being a necessity in the draft.
Okay.
And with that being in mind, then yeah, we're just looking at the top tier, right? We're looking at Karma, we're looking at Braum, we're looking at Kench. And maybe Bard as well, as champions that we can see on almost every team comp that are very flexible in what you can put into stuff.
Yeah.
And those are the champions that really stand out to me as what's going to get picked a lot.
Yeah, the only thing that I think actually changes from like the playoffs that we've seen in like the 6.15 patch is Trundle, low priority now. Not as many tanks will be played in like
cooldown nerf
jungle
on
and
his
top,
pillar
and then the
hurts.
cooldown nerf in the pillar. Not just early, it just never goes back to where it was.
Right, exactly.
So the ability that you would max first and really would abuse in his kit is not as accessible. Because I mean, you used to be able to like pillar, and then the guy gets out of the slow and walks like 2 feet, and you pillar again. It got really low.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So yeah, so he falls a little bit, but aside from that, we said Braum, Tom Kench as the two melee priorities, and then we have Bard and Karma as kind of the range priorities. Why is it then that champions like Soraka, Janna, are not viable? Is that simply because we're losing tankiness and CC in other roles, such as the jungle, that we just need to have those options from the support lane?
So like Janna was honorable mention for me because things like Kennen coming into the meta, you would be able to counter pick with that, or a Tristana for an AD carry position. But I still think she's good. I still think that if you're picking like winning other winning lanes, like if Botlane's gonna get shoved in, like she's still a pretty good pick. But Soraka, it was really kind of confusing because she was the win lane support, like just trade all day. And then when we went to standard lanes with no lane swaps, people just stopped playing her. I'm actually not sure exactly what happened in that.
Do you guys have any thoughts?
I think just other champions are providing more, like Tom Kench ultimate and the 1-3-1 is just so strong. Braum is just so good to give into like, especially if the enemy has so many melee champions to give the CC. And Alistar just has also this engage potential. And Soraka, and it's just more like this passive, we're trying to
battery
get
of
trades.
health,
Right.
And then once we get ahead, it's a win harder champion, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
I personally think I have a lot of experience with Soraka because my region plays Soraka like the most, right? But especially like Afro plays a lot of Soraka,
Yeah.
Adrian. If you are running more poke-oriented stuff, Soraka becomes better. That's why I'm saying like those 4 champions or so are the best blind picks. But
Gotcha.
I told you the pool is very, very wide on what you can pick. I do think there's a situation where we might see Janna. We'll definitely see Janna during the event, and at some point I think we'll see Soraka as well.
Right.
And Alistar will definitely
Maybe
make
even
it back.
Nami, right?
And then I actually think at some point she'll see play too. I just
Right.
don't know specifically when we'll see them.
Yeah, so for clarity, the lists that we're creating are not necessarily to say that these are the only champions that are going to be played at Worlds. They're the ones that, will be almost universal in
Yeah.
a sense. They're pickable in most scenarios.
They're bannable as
Of
well,
course, there's always the second list of pocket picks and counter picks.
And the great great example of that is like, Kench, Braum, we said had very high priority. Well, because if they get picked, Tarek priority moves up because he does very well into melee matchups. So it's really just like those are the best in the blind scenario, but as soon as they get picked, the pool widens a lot.
Yeah. Okay, well, so now with this in mind and knowing that the support pool is perhaps larger than we've ever seen it before, as you mentioned, there's a possibility of picking one of maybe 12 champions where 4 are kind of the core. Can we determine which players will be, once again, benefit or hurt by these changes? My initial thinking is, well, I want to look at the LCK for moving back towards those melee supports, right? The Korean teams have forever favored the Brahms and the Tom Kenches more than the Western teams. Are they going to be benefited by that reintroduction of those champions?
I feel like they've been playing them for a long time as well. And it never really fell off for them after MSI. And Tom Kench, just the way the Korean teams use Tom Kench is absolutely beautiful. Like it's even, you think he's gonna go ward, and he's actually just picking up the jungler to go gank that bottom lane. And it throws people off, and it's very paralyzing. And with other ultimates like GP ultimate and Shen ultimate not being as prioritized, like the Tom Kench is absolutely insane. And the way that the LCK abuses him is beautiful to watch. Like Wolf, really high up there in how he ends up using it. And I also think Gorilla is, he was the Tom Kench guy.
Well, no, if there's someone's going to play Janna, it might be Gorilla.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
No, for sure. I can see that be coming up from him, or even Afromu has been playing like a decent amount of Janna and Soraka throughout the year.
Thoughts on specific support players that are hurt, benefit, unchanged?
Not so much. I'm just more looking forward to like bot lane matchups. I think that this Worlds has like so many good ADCs and support, so I'm just like really looking forward to this Worlds, how people are doing. Like personally from our side, from Europe's side, I really want to see how Forgiven is doing because he's now, in Worlds and he's been, doing some kind of montage plays already and playing really, really well. So I think he will do really fantastic. But he's playing against so great other ADCs like Deft, Uzi. It's double lift as well.
Yeah, Deft, Uzi, double lift, Sven, Forgiven, Bang, Prey.
Like,
holy
there
crap!
are a lot of great.
The bot lane is nuts this tournament.
Yeah, like the bottom lane that I'm looking out for is that Prey Gorilla.
Yeah.
Like that lane, I think that they got buffed this patch. I feel like they both can like really play to their strengths even more than before. When I look at RNG's bottom lane, I'm not sure if this helps them or hurts them because like Mata, great playmaker all across the map. He wants to win the whole game for his team, and Uzi's like, last pick me Caitlyn. Like they were legitimately saving their last pick for counter pick for Uzi to try and win the game off of that.
Right.
And so he'll actually have a better time with that. But then it's like they both got buffed, but in different ways, where they both want to play
different styles.
Everyone who ever talks to me about RNG is always like their individual talent, fantastic.
Yeah.
You break it down one by one, and you're like, this is a team that can win Worlds.
Yes.
However, their ability to work together has always been lacking. When you saw their series against EDG, like sure they may have done okay individually. However, like EDG just mopped the floor with them. Clear Love went lane to lane and just won the game.
It's crazy to think that a team might be individually buffed, right, based on these changes, but that as a unit, they'll actually get worse because the buffs themselves tell them to play in different fashions.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting thing as well because our game, it's not that game where it was back in like season 2, where you snowball, you win the game by yourself. It's still a team game.
Right.
Now it's coordinating with your jungler, your mid laner to get things done. So individual talent will get you very far, but it's that teamwork that gets you the wins.
Yeah, I think this patch is like really bringing this to fruition. Like it will start with individual talent because they need to kind of snowball from the lanes, especially now that it becomes everything just more aggressive. And I think like this is like a really good Worlds patch.
I think stars will shine, but I think teams will absolutely blow other teams out of the water if they're playing right.
I think so too.
Sweet. So yeah, let's look at this larger picture then, right? We've gone through each of the lanes individually. Considering that we will be mostly in standard lanes for the majority of Worlds, do we feel like the focus of the game is, or rather will be pointed at a specific lane? Is it going to be a top lane centric meta, a mid lane centric meta, or a bot lane centric meta? Is the majority of won or lost games going to depend on the jungler or the mid laner or the top laner? Is there a specific role that's going to have the most impact?
So this season in general has been very good for, I think the entire year has been very, very good for junglers.
Okay.
Jungle priority, I actually thought at some point during the season they were the most important role of the 5 roles in the game.
Like Kindred and stuff.
Now at the time, I feel like they're about number 2. I feel like mid lane is always going to be top 2, just because it's in the middle of the map and has the most impact. I think right now though, with junglers coming back, more carry-oriented junglers coming back, like everything in my eyes works off the jungle. Even the mid lane pressure works off the jungle a lot to the extent, unless you can just blind shove the lane, cheat the lane, and then even then the mid lane works with the jungler to make plays a lot of the times.
So who's got the strongest jungle mid duo then? Which team is going to benefit the most from that? I mean, when I think about junglers, I would think MLXG returning to MSI form would be terrifying, right? In this meta. If Gragas and Rek'Sai are falling away and he gets to play more Nidalee and Graves, that's the last person I want to play
If
against.
we're going to talk about the best junglers in the world, Clear Love goes all the way up to the top of my list.
Okay.
EDG has a great shot. If carry junglers are coming back, or even jungle strength in general is very high, Clear Love is 1v5 in games right now.
And when we're talking about jungle mid synergy, I actually think Flash Wolves and TSM may have some of the best alongside EDG.
So that's
Svenskeren,
Karsa Maple for Flash
Karsa
Wolves.
Maple, Bjergsen, Svenskeren. I feel like as a synergy between those two members on the team in those roles, throughout the entire season, they've basically shown that they have that down. They know how to pressure through mid lane, shove it up, go to the buffs, and actually invade and play it correctly. So I feel like those are two of the strongest with it.
And if we talk about the mid lane either being number 1 or number 2 in terms of impact on the game, then you would look at people like Kira, for example, in wildcard regions where the odds are stacked against them, yes, as a team coming into the World Championship, but that's the person you're looking for to really make something happen. Open up that mid lane, affect the side lanes. It's all going to start with someone like him.
We ended up seeing a little bit of that team at All-Stars when Kira was over there, but they've replaced some of those members, and I think that they're a stronger team because of it, that they have more experienced jungler now, and that they're able to actually get that synergy down with Kira.
Now, do you think SKT's hurt by this? You know, blank as opposed to Clear Love, or MLXG, or Svenskeren, or any of these other top-tier junglers that are coming
Honestly, I have not watched as many SKT games as I would have liked this season, so I'm going to throw this to Sheepy, because I feel like he's watched enough of foreign regions because he's coaching actively right now.
Yeah, from my side, I think that's EDG looks like the scariest, just like this matchup, because they're just so proficient going into the enemy jungle, like snowballing over the mid lane. I said it in the beginning as well, like mid lane is so important, especially with the jungler synergy right now, and that's why before every time like first pick Rek'Sai, I just like to get the jungle picks in, and I think now it will be exactly the same, and you will try to get like the counter picks later and get the strong picks early. And yeah, I think SKT maybe doesn't have like the best, but it's always like the Faker Worlds buff where he's just like pushing out the lane with Ryze, like starting from level 1. And then, you know, Blank has an easy time just going into the enemy jungle and like putting up vision, and from there on out this goes well. I think Rox Tigers has a really good time as well. I think Rox Tigers and EDG really got the biggest buff from this, but just because they're individually also so strong on the other lanes as well, it just like fits perfectly together for this patch.
Cool. Do you guys have anything else regarding patch that you guys want to throw in here?
Almost like a TLDR, I think the game's going to have more action in it across the board. And styles are going to clash. It's going to be incredibly exciting. And you're talking about like lanes being important, and like we kind of settled on mid lane jungle like being 1 and 2. But I want to emphasize coaching, because I think that coming into Worlds with so many patches, it's so important that coaches get their team on the same page, that you get your guys to practice and be a little bit ahead of the meta, but also draft is so important right now. What order you pick in and what you counter pick is going to mean so much in these games.
I super agree. I really think this is like the dream for the coach right when this is coming up, that just fitting all the pieces together, everybody understands every champion perfectly, and especially like for a team, for example, G2. What was the most impressive thing about G2 is the way that they are fighting. Like, not always winning the lanes convincingly. Usually just bot lane is winning very convincingly.
Or Trick.
No, or Trick.
Trick.
Yeah, or just, you know, whatever lane he's going to. So, yeah, that was really impressive to see. But the way that they were fighting and, like, getting the maximum out of the champions was really great to see. And I honestly think that the strongest team will very early surface. because they will understand the picks the best, and they will understand the champions the best, and they will work the best together. And I think the gap will be just wider from this patch.
Also means that that'll be the team that defines the meta, like as we see it develop even within Worlds. We have to remember it's a 5-week tournament, so there will be no shortage of changes, you know, by the teams themselves as we kind of realize which champions are more powerful than others.
And I love watching from group stages week 1 to 2 because teams go back to the drawing board. Ones that are slightly behind, you know, they have to get more, but also you can't be complacent. It's what happened with North America. I remember the Azir Tristana strategy that most of our teams were running CLG Cloud9, and it was like, that got exploited the second week, and then I was like, oh, we didn't really have too much else. So you have to have a diverse playbook as well, which is another thing that I put on the coaches.
I just think like versatility and being able to adapt is really important. Like exactly like you said, this 5-week event, to be able to play the same stuff at week 1 to week 5, huge detriment if that's the case. And especially because you think about a lot of the new champions coming up. Champions that we suspect to be strong right now: Rise, Soul, a bunch of champions that require a lot of games to be able to really understand. Even champions like Jace, for instance, or Rumble. Rumble especially is a champion that's very unique in how he plays, and so you need a lot of games to really play out these champions. Players who are able to adapt very well on a week-by-week basis are the players who are able to counterpick more, have kind of the edge on their opponents.
All right, well, the 2016 World Championship kicks off on September 29th, and we'll finally get to see which teams have adapted best to these changes. I'd like to take a moment to thank Zyrene, Skara, and Sheepy for providing us with the insight that they have today, and of course, we can't wait to see all of you in San Francisco. For even more in-depth discussion on the World's patch, check out the links below.